Honest community, before we dive into this episode, we've got a quick free favour to ask. If you enjoy the Honest Property podcast, please hit like, follow and subscribe wherever you're listening from. It helps us grow, reach more people and bring on guests that you want to hear from. Thanks for being a part of this. We appreciate you more than you know.
Hello and welcome to the Honest Property podcast with your hosts Becky and Ruth, and we like to talk all things property, entrepreneurship and business. And today we have Imogen, who is the founder of Freedom Geeks. So we actually got recommended to Freedom Geeks through Michelle Keynes, actually. So shout out to Michelle. But we've also heard of Freedom Geeks through so many other property investors in the sector. We were like, oh, we need to find out what this is. And it's about having a virtual assistant, which is so needed now in the property industry and just in business in general. Our own father has always raved about having a VA when he was on his entrepreneurial venture. And yeah, we're just really excited to have Imogen. We'd love you to be able to tell us how you got started and how this all came about.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, ladies, for a lovely introduction. Yeah, so this was a total accident. This was not what I was supposed to be doing with my life. But good, it's better. So the beginning was I was unhappy in the corporate world. I was working in financial services and not loving it and having that whole there must be more to life feeling. I was quite obsessed with entrepreneurship, but I didn't really know what I was doing. So I used to go to the business startup show every year. I was very drawn towards it, but no one in my family is an entrepreneur. I didn't know any entrepreneurs. So I just didn't really know how to do it. I started an events company that wasn't particularly successful. I didn't lose any money, but I put in a lot of time and energy and effort and it just didn't take off. Quite typical, like with a newbie, like enthusiasm and I want to create something, but didn't actually realized that it wasn't a viable business for various reasons. And then a friend of mine asked me to go along to a property investing weekend, actually, to learn about property. And my immediate reaction was like, oh no, that sounds really boring, like sounds awful. But I had a rule of like at the time, and I think this is a really good rule if you're like at a crossroads or you don't know what to do next, which is if someone asks you something, you don't have like a good reason to say no, you've got to say yes to sort of, push your boundaries, explore new things and all of that. So I went along to the weekends and I think by day two, I'd realized it's going to change my life. And then I went into property investing. That was the first thing that I was planning to do to actually be in a position to quit my job and, be a full-time investor, business owner. And I did quite a lot in that. I've got, buy-to-let in London. I did HMOs in Birmingham. I think the problem with that is that it just I realized that, I had very little time and very little money when it comes to property to do it. So I was resourceful, I was raising money, all of that. But I very quickly realized that it's going to take quite a long time and quite a lot of investing to be able to get out of my job with this strategy. It's just not, I think it's certainly for me, and there are different strategies, obviously, but it would have been quite long term. And I was like, I just don't know if I can work that long because I just am not enjoying it. So the other thing that I was doing, as I mentioned, I had no time, and this was very much inspired by the 4-Hour Work Week in the beginning, was Tim Ferriss and him talking. It changed my life. I mean, a lot of people talk about it and the different books for different people, but that one really did change my life. Because I'm also a digital nomad. I don't know if you ladies know that. Yeah, so I saw your last episode. You're interviewing someone who's a digital nomad. I am in the UK right now, but I'm mostly based out of Mexico City and I travel extensively in the world.
I've never been. I'm on the airport for like 10 hours. I made a wrong choice of flight.
No, you should have left. 10 hours is a good window to get out and look around.
Next time, come visit.
No, I really love it there. It's my Mexican London. It's very vibrant, great place. So yeah, I didn't really know exactly, like I was looking at all these different ways of solving my problems, and I'd heard about Filipino workers. I'd heard that they were good, and I found a Filipino job site. I ran an advert looking for somebody and I got thousands of applications. So the first thing I learned was there's a lot of demand from the Philippines to work for online for UK businesses. But of course, that's extremely overwhelming, and don't ever use your own inbox when you do this because it takes a while to rescue it back out, because I made every mistake in the book in the early days on the journey to like where I am now. So what I then did is I was really thinking about it and I was like, I want to hire somebody really good, not just like any Filipino virtual assistant. And I remembered when I was a graduate from university how the investment banks used to hire, putting candidates through all these filters of different tests and only like taking the best ones. So I basically created my version of that. And I was like, I'm going to test the Filipino VAs in the same way that I've seen investment banks test graduates to find the top few.
What role were you asking for when you were putting out your ad?
Just like, oh, it was a long time ago now. This was probably nearly a decade ago when I was hiring my first VA. But my vision was just a mini me. And this is really where you start. So I was like, I am busy. I'm working corporate. I'm trying to do this property investing thing. There's a lot of things that I need to do that aren't that complicated, like set up viewings, follow up the viewings, like just, all this coordination, help me research. And I'm like, as long as someone's bright and switched on, I can teach them how to do these bits and pieces and keep layering on what they need to do. But I wanted it to be a very, very open role. And, the GVA, the generalist, it is an open, flexible role. When your organization's a bit bigger, like mine, like I've now got 12 people working for me, it does need to be a bit more distinct. But I mean, especially at that point where you're sort of starting up and figuring things out yourself, because your business might flex and things, when you first get into property, you don't even know what strategy you're going to like, or I don't know if you have a vision for this podcast in 5 years or that kind of thing, but you don't know in the beginning. Like sometimes the market dictates, or you just learn things about yourself and that dictates where you go next. So
Yeah.
I just needed someone to be really up for it and really flexible, and they were like that. From the Philippines, they don't quite have the Western mindset a lot of the time. It depends. Sometimes they've come from a corporate background and they might have it a bit more, but I found them not to be like, this is my job and I don't do this because it's not my job. Like I found them to be really up for it, and they understand because, I'm doing everything. I'm doing sales and marketing and financials and everything. And so, I'm setting the example, and they generally do embrace that. And then for me in particular, I like to position people both to their strengths and what they enjoy doing. So there's a bit of refinement around that too. But yeah, no, I just needed a mini me, and I ran the tests, and that started. But when I first created those tests, by the way, I asked some of my friends to do them for me just to see what kind of scores they got. And when the scores came back, I didn't tell them this, it was a bit cheeky, but I was like, I'm only hiring people from the Philippines who can kick my friends' butts. And my friends were like bankers and lawyers, and they were smart people. And yeah, about a third of the Filipino applicants that were coming through were scoring equal or higher. So I was like, okay, this is good. Yeah. And I took them because I was like, I need some kind of benchmarking. And then from then, I mean, the systems that you've seen having hired from us, they're way more evolved than where I was back then. This was me playing around, trying to figure it out and getting good people. Honestly, right from day one, I mean, the very first customer we had, he tried to hire someone from the Philippines and it hadn't worked out for him. And he got a bit frustrated because he's like, it should be able to do this. And he just, I think the quality control in the beginning wasn't quite right with what he was doing. And we found him somebody, and they were working together for years. He told someone else and they came, because I've never really promoted us. It's been 90% word of mouth and about 10% podcasts like this, public speaking.
Yeah, we've only ever heard word of mouth,
And that's such a good sign because it's all organic.
but also because we're Filipino and we're English, and so we thought, so when we found out that Freedom Geeks hires Filipinos, we were very excited.
That was obviously close to our hearts because it's also giving back opportunity to our own communities.
Yeah.
But we also know how hardworking the work ethic that people have there as well is very high. So it feels sort of full circle to be in this industry and be able to give back and highlight and provide, and that you've created a business that gives back to the Filipino community, which is really wonderful for us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Out of other communities though, why the Filipino community? Why Philippines?
Just quickly, I just wanted to say on that, because it's, there's a lot of work from home mums that go for these opportunities, or like, because the Filipinos is so family orientated, sometimes they're caring for the elders, they don't really have the culture of putting people in homes, etc. So, and even the dads, I mean, we don't get so many men just apply generally, because I think I'm always a completely open opportunity, but I think there might be a little bit of mentality in the Philippines still that men go out to work, and then women sort of, that they're looking for the more sort of stay at home roles as much as possible because it's practical, because they are usually the primary, carers of the kids and things. But for mums, I've got several mums in my team. And I know, like, for them, and it depends on how the business is set up and what you need, but we have 100% flexible working hours. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't care when you work. I just need you to get your work done. And I do measure it with productivity tools and things. But if it is that you need to take your kid to the doctor or drop off at school and things, that doesn't impact either of us. I'm like, just get it done. I don't care. You manage your time, you figure it out around all of those commitments. And I know from feedback for some people, they're just like, I just don't know how I would have. It's impossible to have made this much more money in this flexible way without this kind of offering. And it's still not that common in the Philippines. I mean, there are a lot of work from home jobs, but not all of them have got full-time hours or, the range of responsibilities or the right communication from the people leading them to make it a resounding success. So they
I
do
think it's
really
great.
appreciate it.
It's a lot of hiring people with a lot of self-sufficiency. And if you can be self-sufficient, then it means then you can work this around your life better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I try never to judge. I mean, I think some people might be like, oh, this woman's got 3 kids, so I'm going to make assumptions that she's got enough time. Whereas I won't even ask about that. I mean, if they come through and they perform and then they mention they've got 3 kids, I'm like, well, good for you. You're even better than I thought, because that's not easy. And you've just shown me that you're really, really good. But I never make assumptions about people's situations, because resourceful people are resourceful. I mean, we see that in the entrepreneurial world, the things that people do. It's incredible. So
Yeah,
yes,
that's
and I'm
true.
so sorry, you did ask me another question, but I got carried away on the community giving back.
Oh no, there's a million and one things I could ask. I just wondered, like, there's a lot of other sources, like countries that people
Right.
source from, like in I think India
South
and South
Africa.
Africa.
So why did it just so happen to be the Philippines at the time, and it stuck?
Yeah, no, I've been playing around a lot with that. The Philippines, the English of educated people in the Philippines is pretty amazing. They quite often, there's a huge industry of outsourcing call centers from the USA to the Philippines. And if you hire the ex call center people, and many of them are sick of the call centers because quite often there's a physical requirement to be there, which means they have to do the Manila commute, which is soul destroying. Yeah, okay, you ladies might know. People in London think they've got it bad. Manila is like 3 times worse. I'm not even exaggerating. For people to get anywhere in Manila, it's hell. And I have a lady in my team who used to commute 3-4 hours a day minimum round trip, because of the traffic and the bottlenecks and things. So, people don't necessarily want to work on the physical location of the call centers, which is often a requirement, even if they're working from home, because it's the US. It's an overnight shift for someone from the Philippines. So overnight shifts, after, 2, 5, 10 years, you've got a family. I mean, people are just exhausted with it and they burn out. The UK time difference, if they were working UK hours, they would have to work late, but it's not overnight. It's a bit of a difference, and it's a huge step forward, even if they're working fixed UK hours. So a lot of them, when they see UK company, are like, oh, yes, please, because I don't have to work the night shift. And I really appreciate that. So that's one thing with the outsourcing that's taken place there. There are a lot of very, very good English speakers, and there's a bit of a mentality of you need to speak English to have a professional career. The Filipinos see their peers, people they know, having huge benefits from that. And it's very, very interesting for them. The accent, if they've worked in a US call center, I mean, their English can seem almost flawless. It doesn't take very long for you. I mean, they'll sound American. It won't take very long for you to speaking to them to be like, this person isn't American. The culture is very different. They're like, their English is amazing, but there's something else going on here. They're just incredibly, it's very difficult for me to say this without people laughing, but like Filipinos are just incredibly like humble and polite, and like, no offense to Americans. I've got many American friends I love. They don't exude that normally, whereas Filipinos kind of do. So, that's one thing, the culture, they're extremely hardworking, very loyal. Treat them right, they'll treat you right. I've got a good sense of humor. They don't like confrontation, and there's good and bad sides to that, I would say. And the good side is that they'll always just be so polite and handle a lot of situations with extreme grace. I think the bad side can sometimes be, I need you to stand up and speak a little bit more. And I've certainly encouraged and taught my team to do that, to the point where no one's really backwards anymore, because if they're like, Imogen, what should I do? I'm like, what do you think you should do? And I'm always bringing them out until the point they're like, there's no point in asking her, because she's just going to make me step up anyway. But it's good. I did soft launch in India. I decided not to go forward with it. The tech side of things was brilliant, as you might expect. I'm not a technical recruiter. I don't have a technical background. I don't want to get into technical recruitment. There is a whole wonderful world of me helping entrepreneurs with Filipino assistance in non-technical recruitment. I don't need to touch it. I don't want to touch it. So it's not really necessary for me to go after the tech skills in India. Aside from that, actually, my Filipino team were testing the English of the Indian candidates and finding it wasn't as strong, which was quite interesting. And then during the interview process, it was a little bit more tricky with communication. That wasn't as clear. And then, I wasn't getting quite the same results. I think because India is so strong for technical recruitment and it has got a particular strength, and it just didn't really work for my company. So I tried it and then I dropped it. I was like, it's not even that advantageous in terms of time zone. It's not like, if I could recruit from Latin America, it would be the Filipino VA switches off and the Latin American VA switches on, and there's no one working a night shift, which I've always been attracted to. But one of the problems with Latin America is, well, one of them's English. There's not so many people speaking great English. You can find a few, but you probably need to pay them about double what you pay in the Philippines to recruit at that level. So still affordable potentially for the UK, but a little bit of a different proposition. The other thing that's made it really, really easy to recruit in the Philippines is there's some really established job platforms. You come through an agency like mine, we've got a lot of experience and we help you with the process. If you wanted to do it yourself and you ran an advert on a job platform, you could kind of do that and you'd start to attract in a lot of candidates and get a bit overwhelmed. But you can't really find the equivalent in like Venezuela or Colombia. Like, it's hard to get on the job platforms. As soon as you go on, they're like, what's your local registration number? And you don't have one because you're not registered in that company. So I found a lot of blocks. I did recruit a few people from Costa Rica. I tried in the Middle East, but the internet wasn't good enough, basically, in Africa. So yeah, because we do a lot of internet checks as well, and that they were just failing on that. So I have dabbled with other regions, and I was like, I just want to double down on the Philippines. And if I did anything else when I've got the bandwidth, I would go to Latin America because I'm so present there. And, I'm just looking at how that would work. But it's, I don't need to right now.
Future plan. Can I ask a personal question as well with your nomadic lifestyle?
Oh, yes.
How
Before we actually hit record on this podcast, Imogen did say that she's also a nomadic investor. So how's the VA service like tied in with being able to be location free?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of perfect for me. My primary focus right now is not property investing. So it's very much on the back burner for me because I think that's something that you would need to do on the grounds. I will probably come back into it, but again, just setting things up and then letting them run. I think in the next 12 to 18 months, I'll kind of be back in a bit of in a way. However, I will do it with the mindset of I'm going to be away a lot, so I need to do the setup work and then I'm going to go. So, I've got a mentor, we talk about the right strategies for that, etc. It's probably going to look a bit different. On the Freedom Geek side, it's been great because everybody who we work with has to learn to work remote to work with a Filipino VA because it's all 100% remote. So the fact that I've set up this company to work remote from day one has just meant that it's a huge compliment for my nomadic lifestyle because, they're remote, I'm remote. We have to figure it all out. Probably one of the challenges is I do time zone jump. So all of a sudden, all the meetings will shift from one calendar to another one. But we give the team a couple of weeks notice and it's fine, but it's not been a problem. I think with property investing, obviously, I saw that you did a podcast episode about a nomadic person who was property investing, and most property investors would struggle to do that. But yeah, I mean, my primary business is to run a recruitment company and everybody knows it's online. In the very early days when I was in London, people wanted to meet me. But in the very early days, I had a corporate job, I had the property investing business, and I had the recruitment business. So honestly, I had no free time. And I'd say to people, unless you come and meet me on my lunch break from work, I can't really do that because, for me to cross town and meet you in London and then have a meeting with you and come back home, I could do 4 or 5 calls in the same time. And I'm really sorry, but that's what I need to do because of the position that I'm in. And people accepted that. So, I just had to set that boundary. I had no choice to make everything work in the early days. And thank God I did set that boundary because it got to a point where I realized well, I'm running everything pretty much out of my bedroom for the Freedom Geek. If that's going to be my primary focus, I quit my job. I bought a one-way ticket to South Africa and I've been traveling ever since. That was April 2018. So coming up for 7 years.
organized, and it's basically just going like the modern way of working in business is not. I think sometimes it can feel a little bit old school where you're meeting people, having a coffee, and but that does take a lot of time out of your day when you can have the same sort of meeting virtually and more efficiently, and then wrap up your day and carry on enjoying your life as well. It's not, I think, what you're doing. Is there a reason why you wanted to have your business more and more efficient? Is it just because you were growing and scaling, or just because you just one day went, actually, having to meet all these people is just
Yeah, a lot of people were happy to have a phone call. A couple of people really wanted to meet. I just had the boundary with them. Like I said, I did that because I had no time. I was extremely time poor, and that was before the choice to travel. And then I kind of got this breaking point, and I was like, I can't continue to work a full-time job and run two businesses, especially because I don't enjoy the job and I feel really drained and burnt out with that. And that was when I was like, property investing is going to go on the back burner. I've done a lot of work in it. I'm still in the community. The Freedom Geeks going to come up as number one because from year one to year two, we quadrupled just through word of mouth. I mean, I didn't even mean to start that business. People asked me for help and they kept coming and they kept coming.
It obviously was very much needed at the right time.
Yeah. I didn't even, like, it sounds bad, I didn't even particularly want it at the beginning. I was like, I don't know, why would I run a recruitment company? Like, I've never dreamed about that. But then I kind of mindset shift because a lot of people were saying thank you, and like the Filipinos and the entrepreneurs, like their lives were easier. And I was like, well, I can get very excited about helping other entrepreneurs. That can definitely be a mission for me. And then, as you ladies know, because you've been through my process, this is the first time we've really interacted apart from the lovely message that you dropped me. So the business is at a point now where the calls are not with me. Like, being like the queen of delegation, I've delegated up through the levels. So right from the initial call through to all the fulfillment stuff, I don't touch that. So yes, from the delegation and scaling point of view, I mean, that wasn't how I was thinking in day one because I didn't know. But now where I am now, I'm like, I don't want to do any kind of repeat day-to-day activity, whether it's sales, operations, marketing, whatever it is. So my team do it all for me. So now I do, like, the public speaking, the podcast, high level management, and creating new products and services to strengthen what we're doing, which we're constantly doing. And so, yeah, with that has been deliberate. But even if I was based in the UK, I would be doing that. It's just that I'm doing a remote version of it. So yeah, it's just a point of scaling of where we are now that I'm taking it really seriously. Like, what's the value of my time? What should I be doing? What should I not be doing? And I love the customers, the community. I get really excited meeting other business owners, but they were taking a lot of my time. And I was like, the problem is when people take a lot of my time, I can't move forward the business in the way that I need to. I got the team to step up and take those roles over, and I think they do fantastic with that, and it has freed me. And then I'm just very strategic now. I mean, I love things like this. I'm always very grateful. And there are particular people that, of course I'll meet them because I know that they're big players. But outside of that, if, this person's very nice, that's sweet, he's got a problem, it shouldn't really come to me. That should be something the team take cares of, because this is a very common sort of thing. So, yeah.
The system you've created is, like you said, Ruth and I we've been through it, and we've had our introductory call, and we were blown away.
We're like, this is very streamlined. This is really good. Like, the customer service,
like, incredible. Our call with I don't know what his role.
Yasmin or Geo.
Geo.
Love him. He's brilliant, amazing,
Yes.
and just even the steps to reaching out to you and whoever was coordinating our communications with each other. It was just so efficient, and it just really made us reflect on, there's just so many moving parts to being a business owner, and able to delegate and streamline and systemize this with someone else, and at the same time as providing an opportunity through the platform that you have. It's just all round fulfilling, and just makes everything work so much more efficiently.
So how do you start with getting a VA? How do you start with delegating? Like, where would you start, as if you've never had a VA before and you're a little bit lost on like what tasks to give to VA?
Hey guys, if you're new to property investing, we know exactly how hard it is to figure out where to start. That's why we created the Beginner's Roadmap. It's your guide to mastering the fundamentals so that you can move forward with clarity and confidence. Plus, you'll gain access to our free community for ongoing support. Just hit the link in the show notes. Now, let's jump back into this episode.
Okay.
Yeah, just quickly before that, when you're talking about the system that we built, I mean, the reason that's come around is because I'm obsessed with our customer journey. So when the person calls us, I've really thought about how they're feeling, what they're worried about, what they need, etc. And the emotional side of it is something I've absolutely hammered into the salespeople, because I want them to understand how people are feeling when they call us, and 90% of people are overwhelmed, in pain, stressed out, a bit worried about burnout, if not now, then maybe in the not too distant future, fed up, still pursuing their dream and working hard, but at the same time, there's some kind of recognition this is not sustainable for the long term. And they're wondering, like, is a VA going to help, or are they going to be more stressed? Are they going to be, bad? Is this going to be a waste of my time, which is so precious, my money, etc. So I know where people are at because I was there when I first started. And then everything else has been designed around that. And my thing with my brands is to try and make people smile as well as part of it. So you would have seen, you got sent little videos, the people that you're going to speak to, they were introducing themselves, things like that.
Gosh, absolutely. It's like you get to know who you're talking to.
Especially because it's virtual, then being able to see a face.
And that it's a real person on the other
it makes
side,
it very
not just some
personable.
sort of bot. It is a stranger from the other side of the world at the end of the day, but you've made it very, like, it's a human-to-human connection. Knowing Gio's, the fact he's a hip-hop dancer and stuff like that, it's like fun and lovely to know, and it makes you, that's such a good thing to do because it makes you connect with the other person that is essentially going to be an important part of your team.
Yes, and it's automated. So, there's no, I mean, a little bit of work went into making the video, but after that, we send that to everybody. So it didn't really take us any extra time and effort to create that feeling that is very personal, but it's still an automated process, because I know when you're moving through a system of automated processes, it can feel a bit like inhuman if you get it wrong, which is why whenever I create an automated process, I think, do we need like emojis or videos, or to use a certain type of language so that person feels that these are friendly bots, these are friendly processes, which makes you laugh, but it can be done extremely well with a bit of sort of thought and care about that. Like, where are they now? What might they like to see next? What makes us different from everyone else? And like, there's more and more and more of that going into the brand. So that's always been a part of it, is I do want people to sort of smile and feel the warmth, even if because it's got to be automated processes as you scale, and it is that challenge of finding the balance between it. But like I say, I obsess about the customer journey and the different stages of it, because where you are just before you speak to the sales team is different to where you are like just after you've paid, is different to where you are as you're going through the process, the different stages. And I'm doing more and more and more to help people through. Yeah, the delegation question. So like, where do you start with delegation? Because people are incredibly confused about this. And it comes up in questions like, what do I delegate? That's a big one. Or what does a virtual assistant do? Or what can a virtual assistant do? Which is a big one. That's why, because I got asked about that so much. And I was kind of talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And then the first version of our sort of giveaway, we've got a giveaway on our website, which is 50 tasks you can delegate to a virtual assistant. And then for people that come through and pay, and sometimes I'll give it away as a premium, is like this ramped up 500 tasks you can give to a virtual assistant. Because I was like, if I give someone 500 ideas on what they can delegate, they can never come back and be like, what can I delegate? Because you're like, again, they're like,
automate. It's already
yeah, it's kind of interesting because I have to be careful with that. So the purpose of it is to get people all excited and onto our mailing list, because it sounds like a sexy marketing document. So yeah, I want the 500 ideas. Plus I'm an ideas person, because the first version was 100 ideas. And I'm like, let's 5x it, because I'm a bit crazy. But then the thing is that that's very overwhelming. And the point I'm making with that document is that a business is a collection of processes. So I've thought of 500 processes across the different departments, like sales and marketing and finance and blah, 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 personal errands, PA, that type of support. Because a senior exec in a company would have that. But as founders, we don't always treat ourselves like we need a personal PA, but we do, because we're under the same kind of pressures, So the point of it is like, be careful. I can give you 500 ideas. The danger is you're going to get overwhelmed. I can make the point that your business and every business is a collection of processes, which I do. People look through that document and they're like, a lot of this is relevant because I have loads of processes. Yes. And then there's kind of part 3, which is, what are you actually doing all day? So that's where you sort of, you need to, if you're working, set, I don't know, like a little alarm on your phone that goes off every 30 minutes and jot down what you're doing. And not like your to-do list, what you think you're going to do. Because I know my to-do list and my actual day don't add up very well, ever, actually. They're just sort of thoughts of what I need to be thinking about a lot of the time. And then what I'm actually doing, especially if you're very, very reactive because you are overwhelmed and things are pouring in, so you might say, oh my God, I worked 14 hours. And someone said, well, how did that break down? Like, how many hours were you on like repeat admin tasks or operational tasks? Or, properties, a lot of like management tasks, things like that. You don't have to be a genius to do it, but they're very time consuming. On how many of those tasks are you on the phone or on your computer? Have you prioritized them? Like what's the most urgent, what's the least urgent, and also especially what really drives your business forward and what doesn't.
Do
Because
you have your from a personal point, do you have your VA manage your tenants?
yes, one of my VAs manages my tenants. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just a good tip for any of the landlords listening to this. That's something that
We personally really are really would be getting a VA to do on our behalf in order to basically live the lifestyle that you're doing right now, to be location free and not have to necessarily be on site. Actually, we're piecing it all together, and we've got a management team, and they themselves have their own VA. I think it's through Freedom Geeks.
yeah, probably.
Yeah, maintenance team, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maintenance
And I was
team.
like, wow, they're all
But
just...
we realized that why are we, there's obviously no disrespect to any of the management team, because we are now going to be self-managing. This is why we got in contact with Freedom Geeks, is because we're setting up our systems to be able to have a VA to be able to take the management and other tasks off us, the bits that we don't enjoy, by having a VA to help us with that.
There was a term we learned as well, and it sounds like this is what you're very much talking about when we went to a different entrepreneurs event.
Yeah.
And it's that as business owners, we need to make sure that we're working within our zone of genius. That's the thing that we enjoy, or the thing that's going to push the business forward.
Or bring the
and
revenue
it's not
in.
doing those repetitive tasks like you're saying. It's learning to delegate and treating yourself as the CEO, as the top positioned person who is able to do that, and remembering you can do that. It's possible with Freedom Geeks.
Yeah, so I live and breathe the kind of the wealth dynamics things that you're talking about. So I'm a creator. So for me personally, I'm good at the strategy, the vision, seeing things, thinking of things, ideas. I don't particularly like the build. I like supervising the build, but I don't actually want to do it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I have my right-hand woman, I mean, her whole day is trying to keep the Imogen monster under control. So she's like building all of my ideas and just making sure everything, and I'm such a perfectionist, but I actually don't function that well without that kind of support. Like, it's really important to me. And my whole team is, when we do our screening, we also screen for what profiles they are. I mean, you probably would have seen that. So I know that I need a mix of profiles, and when their profiles come up, I need to think about what roles they are. So when you spoke to Gio, for example, I mean, do you know what he is on the wealth dynamics thing? Would you guess? Do you guys have I don't know how good your thing is with that.
No.
Do tell.
But yeah, he's a star, which if you think about it makes sense. So he loves talking to people. It lights him up. So is the other salesperson. I have enough star in me as a secondary profile to understand how stars are supposed to sell. And a huge amount of it is being tuned into the emotions, into the relationship building, into the entertainment factor, because Gio makes you laugh and you love him immediately. They're very good at that, and they're positioned for it and they love it. So I really think about that a lot, and my team is a reflection of that as well. Like, who enjoys doing the work? I've got a lady in my back office. She doesn't like change. She's the opposite profile to me. I don't like things to be the same. So we've got her doing a lot of the processing over and over again, which she happily does. Whenever we change and update our processes, she freaks out. Someone has to calm her down and take her aside and explain it to her. And so she gets the new system, and then everything's okay again. But, you know, I need her too, because those are not roles that other people like. But she likes everything to feel under control. She knows exactly what's happening. And while we don't change things, like she'll just run them and, you know, until the next version appears. So, yeah, no, I totally.
Because other people can't do that.
And one more time.
So that her role, like every other role, is valuable because it means then you're not cross tasking what other people aren't as skilled to do.
It's not just the skill, it's the energy. Like she's happy doing the kind of plodding along, making sure that everything and the details and, you know, the boxes are ticked. That would make me so utterly miserable. I'd be like, you know, I'd go be suicidal 6 months of doing that. It would just be awful. So I need to be a little bit left alone to think as much as possible. And like with the team ramping up and the business kind of becoming more and more resilient and built out, I am left alone to think, which means I then come back with all my ideas and then work with basically the projects and implementation team to do the next wave of it. And that's very important for me. Occasionally come out to do, like I say, things like this, which I really do love. And then other people in my team, I really think about the energy balance, not just what are they good at, but what would they enjoy? Where is their energy? Okay. And quite often it is linked, like the skill sets and the energy. So as a creator, my energy is like this. So if my whole team was like that, we would be ridiculous. We'd be like monkeys at the zoo, hanging off the bars, throwing things at each other, nothing ever being done. So, you know, I need to minimize the other creators because we're the most disruptive profile. And so I have to be very careful.
So, or the different profiles, where did you learn this?
We can share it with everybody
because this sounds something that we'd be very interested in if it was a book to read.
It's not a book. It's the Genius event that you went to would have been talking about this, I think.
They just mentioned zone of genius and that we need to remain in that zone. And that is basically where our skills and energies, our talents lie, and delegate the rest.
Yeah.
And then they tried to upsell you to learn about it.
No, not really. There wasn't any term that they used, but it's interesting. We're really intrigued now to know where you learn all like the star and everything.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm talking about the system that Roger Hamilton created for this.
Okay.
And I learned it from a combination of watching his YouTube videos. He has got a free test you can take to figure out what your zone of genius is. I went through a little bit of an emotional thing around it to sort of realize that, because I am a bit of a perfectionist, especially in business, and I'm like, to embrace my weaknesses. Like I need to know that there is certain things that I shouldn't even touch apart from to make sure that they run, because they're so draining for me. So I see them, I know I'm not very good at them, I own that, and I'm like, who's good at them and how do we work together so that it stays away from me, apart from my input about how it should run. But I don't want to be sucked in any more than that, because it's just going to kill off my energy.
Yeah.
And then just experimentation. Like they know in the team, as soon as they're like, oh, because we're internally hiring at the moment, as soon as they're like, this candidate's interesting, the first thing I always ask them is, what profile are they? So I can start to get my head around what that might mean about how they fit into the business and where their energy might be. And then I test it out, and I've learned through, and two people are not the same. Like I'm a creator, that doesn't mean, you know, another creator might come in, and also creators in between these two other ones. One is Star, which is the showman who loves the camera work and loves all of this. And that's my sales team that you've seen. And we co-present webinars, me and the sales team as well, because they are so good. They'll be able to run webinars without me very soon. So there'll be a lot more Freedom Geek webinars. I'll step up for any bigger events, but they are phenomenal. And then there's another side of the creator, which is more like a sort of systematic mechanic designer system type of thinking. And I'm actually quite good at both. But you might get another creator who can't do any of the kind of logical process stuff and is all the Star stuff. Or you might get another creator who's a bit more kind of logical but can't do the camera stuff. They just cannot handle it. So just because they're a creator doesn't necessarily mean that they're the same type of creator as me. So there's a lot of nuances on it. But I think if you can work out some of the basics, and then the thing is, in business, we need to hire people who complement us. Like the woman who's now like my right-hand woman, she's incredible. I love her. We are so different, to the point that when I first interviewed her, I was like, oh, this isn't my kind of person. I don't like her energy. This doesn't really work for me. And thank God I second-guessed myself and gave her a shot in trial, because she's absolutely transformed my business, because she is different to me, and it's actually the perfect complement. And I had to learn that, because we're attracted to people like us, and that's a bit dangerous in business, where there's got to be the balance. But she,
100%.
yeah, she shouldn't be on camera, she shouldn't be doing that stuff, but she is really good at building things and doing it with my crazy input, which is, here's something I drew in a napkin in pink and yellow, can you build it please? And she figures it. I'm not that bad, but she does have to understand how my mind works, and she's got, she's very good at that. So it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's even with like any partnership, even a romantic one. You
Yeah.
don't want to be with someone who's exactly like you, because then
in evolution, isn't it, that if you end up with someone who is exactly like you, then you'll die. You're not going to survive.
to die.
You need to complement each other, what you both lack.
It can definitely throw off the balance for sure. I mean, I think in business partnerships, the thing is we quite often want to work with people who are exactly like us, but actually the best business partnerships might be someone who's 30 years older, who just wants to put in the money in so you can do the work, and they're not, and they've got and they're not interested in any of that. But that's a lot harder for you to, like, you have to actually be a little bit, have the self-awareness and sophistication to figure out how to find those people, how to attract them, how to get the balance right. Because your instinct is, let me work with someone who's exactly like me in the exact same position, who's going through the same things, and it quite often can throw the balance off when it's like a partnership like that. So I've done it, which is why I talk about that. So partnerships quite often in business, it's like the absolute opposite of what you're naturally attracted to and feel comfortable with, which is challenging. So
I think you're speaking a lot about self-awareness, knowing who you are, and in that what you lack.
yeah,
You can fill those gaps. So then just accepting that you can't do it all, or you don't have the time to do it all, you don't have all the skills, and learning to delegate is something, is a totally separate thing to learn as well.
it is. It is, yeah. A lot of business founders are not the enjoy doing things day in, day out types, because we decided to start a business in the first place and change our lives and create things. So I think there are a lot of creatives. I think a lot of very vision-led people, vision-led people who love a lot of growth. And that doesn't sit well with answering the same email 20 times a day. So yeah, the sooner we start to get those processes in, decide how we want it done, teach someone else how we want it done, and that's the whole thing. But it's really interesting. There are so many, I don't have it here, but I've got a slideshow which I use when I do webinars, and there are quotes in there from Richard Branson about delegation, because he runs hundreds of companies now. And basically he just says delegation is the number one key to growth. And Gary Vee says the same thing. And who else? Tim Ferriss basically says the same thing. And they say things like, the moment that you decide and learn to delegate is the moment you truly become an entrepreneur. Things that bother you, if that's your identity, I'm an entrepreneur, and you're like, oh, well, if I haven't learned that, then I feel my pride is hurt, because you've just called me on it and you're really successful. And I live and breathe it, and you have to learn it. And people that are like, I don't want to let go of control, I don't want to manage someone else, things might go wrong. And it's like, yeah, that's all true. However, if you don't, you won't grow so fast. Your business might fail, or you'll be doing the exact same things that are bothering you now in 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, 10 years. And as the time goes by, you're going to be so angry and so frustrated about the fact that you still do those things. And the truly, truly sophisticated people, way beyond me, they come up, they set it up once, they teach someone else, and they don't touch it again, because they understand. Don't even get into the trap and the cycle. And if people don't work out, well, guess what? That's part of business. That's what we signed up for with all the other crazy stuff. And find someone who does. It's all part of it. Or, how much can we automate? How much can we eliminate? And then the rest of it behind. It's people. And then find great people. It's really rewarding. You develop them. They have these incredible careers too. You design, you equip them to win. And ideally, you create a system where they can be replaced without you having to get involved. And that's a bit more sophisticated. Yeah.
Was about to say that as well, that because you've automated everything, you've created a sort of a manual for your business, just like a franchise would. You're not over dependent on any one particular person, which is where I see a lot of other businesses, they fall, because they're like, I can't function without you. You know everything, but you've with a manual that you are giving somebody.
What if you were to fall ill, or for any reason you had to take time off work, and you don't have a manual for someone else to be able to replace you? Then you're stuck in that business, and you'll never be there's no escape, because you are the running force of the business. And it's that's where a lot of burnout and resentment can, yeah, exactly.
100%. And everybody knows, by the way, and you'll know too, if I ask you, like, if you both just stop tomorrow, it doesn't matter why, how long before there's a big problem? Is it 24 hours? Is it a week? Is it a month? Is it 6 months? And we all know, and for a lot of business owners, the answer is 24 hours, and they start to sweat because they don't like that. But, you know, it's everybody knows what their own runtime is if they stopped. And I'm not saying, like, even with the people, I've got key people in my business where we would have problems if they disappeared, because they are so skilled or doing a particular thing that it's not that easy to replace them. There are other people in the business where it's a bit more straightforward because it's a very documented role. More than one person does it, and it can kind of be switched or covered fairly easily. So there are different layers to that. And I think even in big organizations, like the very top people who actually run the business, it's quite often a problem if they go. That's not unusual. But at the lower levels, you shouldn't be having those problems. And when we're starting, it takes a while to get day one, it's like a VA, and it might be part-time, it might be 2 hours a day, because you can't handle full-time. That's about as much as you can breathe and handle, and that's fine. And then you gradually step it up to 4 hours, 8 hours, maybe a second person, maybe team growth. But it is a whole process through the different layers of that. And I think it's like a little daily commitment that one of the things that I do a lot is, especially when there's new people in my team and coming on, is I'm not allowed to be busy until they are busy. I am not allowed, because if the whole point is for them to take stuff off me, I am not allowed to get too busy until they are busy. And I'm absolutely fanatical about that. And it's how I've managed to make quite a big success. And it like I said, it might just be they need to be busy for an hour before I get busy. That might be an achievable day one target. That happens every single day. And that's how they're engaged. They feel valuable. They learn very quickly. They start to make a difference more quickly. And,
you can trust them as well, but also it reserves your brain space so that you can actually think about the next move in your business.
Yeah, 100%. And the trust is built through a combination of a lot of communication with them in the early days and checking the quality of their work. Because it does happen where someone's not performing well enough. Unfortunately, that is part of this outsourcing game. But I won't know that if I'm not actually delegating to them, talking to them, and checking their work. I need to see really early. The earlier, the better. To be honest, I've trialed people and known within 3 days if it's good or not, because I can already see what their tendencies are. I can see that they turn up on time, are late. I can see their level of enthusiasm. I can see the quality of their output. And that does not change in the 3rd or 4th month. So if they're not hitting it in the first couple of days, I mean, we're pretty ruthless with this. We'd rather cut and just move on, because there's no point torturing yourself about, should I fire someone for 6 months? That's the stuff of madness. I've been there, and I won't let myself go there anymore.
Yeah. And also with your system as well, if you are through the hiring process of your own VA with Freedom Geeks, you don't get on with your VA for whatever reason, then you don't need to fire them yourself. You can go back to someone to help you. If you don't want to be that person to have to do it, then you have someone else that will be able to.
That was one of our questions with Gio, actually. We were like, oh, what if it doesn't count? You now have a system in place for that, and you don't have to feel like you're going through a breakup.
I've got to say, it's funny that you bring that up. So I thought about that in terms of profiles as well. So I'm actually extremely emotional profile. So I don't like to fire people because it will bother me. My number 2 lady that I mentioned, she's not as emotional as me. Firing for her, no, she's not. She's like, it has to be done. You're not good enough. It's very straightforward. And so she does the fight. I mean, it's not like I switch over to her because she takes on it, whole thing through. But I do think about who should fire and why. Gio's also quite emotional, so he's not the right person to be firing people, to be honest. Although maybe he could, but I do think about that too. But there are people that it really doesn't. It's very straightforward. We gave you a load of, and we're careful when we let someone go, because we measure everyone that we work with. We have a scoring system. This is something I've not yet released to people, but it will be released in the future, because people start working with a VA and quite often they really like their VA on a personal level. Like, I really like you. And, I love working with my team. That's all very natural, but you've got to be careful about really liking someone who's not the right fit for you, because the whole end goal of this is to make your lives easier and take stress off you. So if you really like them, but they're not good enough, that's going to put a huge amount more stress on you, because you're not going to want to face up to the fact that they're not actually the right person to be working with, because you really like them on a personal level. But that does not change the fact that the end goal is for your business to survive and thrive. And then the secondary goals are more like, yes, build a fantastic team, have great relationships. Of course, I'm a huge advocate of that. But, we're small business owners. We cannot mess around with these things. So, I've created a matrix. It's still being refined, but it looks at different data points. It looks at things like I kind of mentioned, like, are they on time? Are they early? Do they seem to have levels of enthusiasm? Are they proactively communicating with you? Because all of these little indicators, and we score them, start adding up to how good your VA is or isn't. And when this is when we get gut feelings of, I don't think something's right. It's because I was like, how can you measure gut feeling? I'm like, it's because my VA hasn't messaged me in 3 days and they're new and I feel weird about that. It's because when I've asked them if they've understood something, they just say yes, but there've been no follow-up questions. That doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
It's because they were a bit late every time, but otherwise they seem okay. Like, all of these things, these uneasiness, are because of their behavior. And if you actually start to measure like the behavior points that indicates whether they're truly engaged or not, you very quickly see if you've got the right person. Because the superstars come in and you're just blown, you're like, thank you for cheerleading me, for taking stuff off me since day one. And even when you didn't know anything, you've just been a rock with your attitude and your offering to take things off, and your ability to deliver at a very high level. And those people, you feel it too. So yeah, I am designing more and more support all the time to differentiate us, and that's part of it.
That's so good. That is
It's just putting language into what your gut is saying, and I think sometimes that can be neglected.
Yeah, you can question
Totally.
yourself. Whereas if you're given a scale or a rating system for different aspects of the service, like you're describing, that's a really clear way to really see if it's working well, or where some areas need bettering.
Totally. Gut feeling. When we talk about relationships, like if you're like single and dating, you've got those little micro behaviors that add up to like a gut feeling of this is good. Yeah, me too. I'm in it. So like, you're like, this is a set of micro green flags, and this is mixed, which is ultimately a red, or this is, micro red flags. And that's what you can say, oh, it's my gut feeling, but you've collected a lot of data. It's not really some vague emotion. You've actually collected a lot of data. So yeah, this is where the geek part of the Freedom Geek comes in. This is who I am. Like,
I love it. You're like systemization queen.
yeah, I'm getting there. It's taken a while. It's like something I've had to think about day in, day out, for what we're doing here. So, but yeah, I do enjoy it.
So just to wrap up, because we could go on for all day, but it's between that limbo part of the part between Christmas and New Year's at this point. So we want to make sure that Imogen gets back to her family. But your tips have been really, really insightful. We're really excited that you've created this business to help people on a personal level. I think we've already said it, but it's from a remote management point of view of our tenants, as well as project management and potentially editing as well.
Yeah, the thing I want to say as well, there's lots of VAs that are out there, but Imogen has really, really nailed it with providing a lot of it for the investor space.
Because there's more than just tenant management now.
And if you're going into
content creation is such a lot of work.
You're going into 2025 as well. If you want to have a full functioning property business, you've got to treat it like a business. So having a VA is going to be able to help you make that easier to run as a full-fledged business. Yeah.
So you've got some resources that to share with our listeners, don't you? So do you want to run through them?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the freedomgeek.com, our website, has got kind of everything. That's where people can book in a call with us if they want to just talk through their situation, ask any further questions, etc. They can get the 50 tasks to delegate as well. For your podcast as well, we can do a giveaway of the 500 tasks to delegate. So I just need to figure out with the team. Yeah, no, because that's like the ramped up version that people often love. So I just need to figure out how we do that with your like show notes and things. But this is what my number 2 inherits. I have a vague idea and go, there you go, some more work to do. So we'll figure out how to do that so people can get it directly from you. And that really is we sell that for about $50 normally. So that's a great resource for them to start to understand the business breaks down and think about how it applies to them. And then, yeah, I mean, a lot of our resources are in my ever evolving membership area, which we do for clients when they come on. We give them support on like VAs and legal, VAs and security, data protection, how to communicate. There are sections that I'm writing about profiles and the balance of the different profiles, which I've mentioned to you. There's upcoming sections that will be there on more on delegation and more on the kind of assessment scoring things as I develop them out. So the membership area, there's already a ton of stuff in there, but I'm creating more and more and more, because that the purpose of that thing is to download my brain so that people never really need to contact me ever again. No, they can, just for fun in future. And then everything else will be there so that people have got, you know, my decade of working with VAs, they've got that at their fingertips, the way that I think about it, and they can find the answer to everything in there. So that's the goal of that. That's the automation that's not a VA. That's, you know, how to access Imogen's brain that's coming together more and more and more. And if I think of anything new, I'll put it in. So I don't have to worry.
Thank you. We will pop all those links, as well as the Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Work Week?
Yes,
below.
yes.
And the Roger Hamilton?
Yeah, Roger Hamilton, and he keeps changing the name of his brand, or he changed it a few years ago. I need to, but we'll figure it out and send you where what I've got as a starting point for that. So
yeah, because I think that would be really useful. Also, selfishly, I want to know what for a star or what we would fall under. But yeah, we'll pop those all in the show notes below. If you want to, people follow Freedom Geeks on Instagram, can't they?
Yes, they can. You're right. Do you know what? It's so funny because I don't promote us very much, as I mentioned. So I know I think we're the Freedom Geek _rebellion on Instagram. That's what we are. So it's feeling feisty that day. Yeah.
I love it. Fantastic. So we're going to pop all of that for you guys listening in the show notes below. If you have any questions, send us a DM or leave a comment down below.
Feel free to get in contact with Imogen as well, so she'll be able to
her VA will answer your questions.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Imogen, for being on the episode. It's been so insightful, and I think is going to allow a lot of freedom future property investors and business owners. So thank you so much for creating what you're creating.
No, thank you for the invite. I hope so. Obviously, I want everyone to have more freedom. It really is a genuine vision of mine. So live and breathe it and try and help people with it.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you so much. Enjoy your New Year's.
Thank you.